I'm Shellie Mae Hayes Dunman. My husband's name was John. And my birthday is January 16, 1926. I was born in Fayetteville, Tennessee. And I was there till I was 6 years old. But I don't remember very much about my young, years in Tennessee. I do remember that J.D. Parks, a cousin of mine, his mother was Lily Parks, and she was Mama's sister. And J.D. and I were around the same age, so we used to play together. And I do remember that we lived with Papa John, my grandfather, who was my father's father. And I remember that at that time, his wife was named Ma. We called her Ma. And I remember J.D. would come over and we'd play, and then he would take me out where the fields were, and we would go down this path and then go way back in this like a cave, and back in there was a spring. And we would drink water out of that spring, and it was so cold. His name was Artist Thomas Hayes, and he was more or less quiet and laid back, and he had a sense of humor, and he could be fun to be with. Years ago, when he was a young man and schools were segregated, he used to teach what we know here in Dayton as preschool. He just did farm work when he was in Tennessee. He worked for the farmers. And
after
that, he decided that, from Uncle Eddie and different other people who had come to Dayton was telling him that he would say, I want to get out of Tennessee, and get my family out of Tennessee and let them grow up somewhere else. He wanted to get out because it was so segregated and everything, you couldn't do much of anything because of being black. And he grew up with that and how he was treated as a black. He wanted to get his children, which was us, away from that. And these people coming down from Dayton, just a few people that had come to Dayton and was working. Back then, most of them worked at Dayton Malleable Iron because they could work in the foundry, back then. But he didn't want to work in the foundry. He wanted to work, somewhere else. And he could always cook. Daddy was a good cook. And he would always get jobs like at a restaurant cooking, He came to Dayton, and he was working, and he would get a job, working in restaurants cooking because he could cook, you know. And he had this job at Virginia Cafeteria. It's not even in Dayton anymore, and I don't know if anybody ever knew it was there, but it was downtown on Jefferson, and he worked there. And then the war started. But when he came to Dayton by himself, he left us with Mama in Tennessee with Papa John. And then he was looking for a job, and he said after he got a job and got a place for us to live, then he was going to come back and get us. But Uncle Eddie always had a car. So Uncle Eddie decided, since he was going to eventually bring us to Dayton, that he would come and get Mama and us. So he took us to Canton, Ohio. And we stayed in Canton. I would have to look up when Lindbergh's baby was kidnapped, because I remember waking up and raising up and looking out the car window as Uncle Eddie was bringing us to Canton, and the little boys with the newspapers were on the corner was saying Lindbergh's baby was kidnapped. They were selling papers. It was at night, you know, and it was in the wee hours of night. No. So he took us to Canton, and we stayed with Uncle Lewis and Aunt Cora in Canton.
How long were you there?
Just a few months. From the time we were in Cincinnati and the Lindbergh thing was happening, we came to, and he took us to Canton then, and we lived there until July. We came to Dayton in July.
Okay.
Of 1932. And because I turned 6 in January, and then we came to Dayton in July because I started first grade. The first year we got to Dayton in 1932, and that's the same year that they started kindergarten here in Dayton, because I remember Mama signing Edna up, because she was only a year younger than I was. She signed her up for kindergarten. I remember holding her hand and me and her walking to Garfield School. Her name was Estella Marshall. And
what was she like?
Mama was nice and easygoing, but she had a temper now. She had a temper, but she wasn't mean or anything. But if she had anything to say to you or about you, she was the type, she'd come and stand and tell you, you didn't get it secondhand, honey. She was like Jean. She'd stand in your face and tell you what she wanted you to know, you know. But she wouldn't do it mean. She didn't curse and all that. But she let you know that she was unhappy with you, you know. And she did that as she raised us. She did the same thing. Her word was law, you know. But she was the best person you ever want to. All of our friends growing up, the neighbors, everybody, just loved her. She would do anything for them. She was always making cakes and stuff for them, you know, and she would, you know, interact with them and everything. But she just would not take nothing off of you if you crossed her, you know what I mean? But other than that, once she said that, then she'd come by and back, it was over once she said what she had to say to you. And she'd be the best friend you ever wanted to have. You need something, she did it. If you needed help, she'd go help you. She'd do everything for you. And all our friends just loved her, you know, because we call, the grandkids call the Big Mama. And so all our friends called her Big Mama, you know. And she was just as good as she could be. But she was the type that, like I told you, her word was bond. It was law. And I think she did a good job of raising us. For the simple reason that she never went to school where you had any problems at school. She never went to church and you had no problems. She kept us on the steady road. She raised all 7 of us. What you did after you were grown was on you. But on her watch, none of us never went to school and had a problem. Nobody had a problem with the police. Nobody had a problem with the neighbors. None of that. She raised 7 kids, and none of us never went to jail. None of us never drank, never smoked. The things that she didn't go for, you just didn't do.
About your sisters.
Okay. With Louise was always sensitive. Now, she could joke with you, but when you joke with her, then she'd go to crying because she didn't want you to, I guess she felt that you were throwing off on her or putting her down or something, you know. Now, she'd sit there and laugh with you and laugh about you and all that, but when the shoe was on the other foot, Louise didn't like you joking about her, okay? All of us had a sense of humor, though, because of our parents. Mama had a sense of humor, and so did Daddy. Because Daddy, sometimes they would tease each other, you know, Daddy and Mama. And Papa John had a sense of humor, too. So we came from a family where we would all laugh together, cry together, and stay together, though, you know. Arslene, I remember one time with Arslene, a funny thing that happened to her was she was dating this one guy, and I guess they fell out or something, and he was going to come down to try to talk her into picking up their relationship again. In the meantime, she had met Kenneth Johnson, who she finally married. And Ken had come, was waiting for her, because I guess they were going to the movies, because that's about all we could do back then. And Ken was sitting there in the house. This guy knocked on the door. And Daddy came and told her, he motioned for her, Daddy did. And she came to Daddy away from Ken. So, and he told her this guy had knocked on the door, right? So when she goes to the door, this dude grabs her hand and runs way up the street. And her telling me, I can't go with you. I can't go up there. So Daddy came out and hollered at him, hey, Daddy was always that way. He was always protective of all his girls. He went out there and hollered at him and said, turn her loose. And since the guy didn't really know Daddy, and he didn't know if he had anything to hurt him with or not, he turned her loose. And Arlene ran all the way back, and his kin sitting there in the house waiting on her. And some other dude then ran her all way up the street. And we teased her about that for the longest. And she said, don't say nothing in front of Ken. Now Edna, she was like, Edna and Jean had mama's temper. They had a temper. So Edna was married to Walter Courtney. And he was in service. He made service a career. So he was away, a lot. But when he would come in town and get with his buddies and go out and stay, and she'd be sitting home with the kids by herself, oh man, it was something. When he walked in that house, she'd jump it. And when she did, I remember one time he came by to pick up a jacket and he was going to get back in the car with his friends. Man, she started saying, she was getting ready to fix the kids something to eat. And she started sailing plates at him. Glass was hitting the wall, just falling everywhere. And I had to go to her, grab both her hands and just settle her down. Well, when I caught both of her hands, he jumped out the door. Ooh, she was mad. But, and she was like Mama. She was good. She would give you anything, do anything for you. She was just, they were that tight, but they had they had that temper though, Now Jean, she just grew up just normal, and she was spoiled as she could be because she was the baby for 5 years before Marshall was born. And we had her rotten. She was just rotten, honey. And of course, we'd go to Mama sometimes. She said, don't come to me. Do not come to me. You all spoiled her. Now live with her. And she thought, whatever it was you had, she thought if she came to ask you for it, she's supposed to get it, And sometimes she'd ask you for something that you don't want to give up, And you try to tell her, look, I'm not giving you this. She said, you better not lay it down. Because see, if you lay it down, she just take and, go on. But then, of course, as she grew up and then she became teenage, Bliss Lewis, that she married, was the first boyfriend she ever had. She had friends, her classmates, that were male. But Bliss was her first boyfriend. So she married her first boyfriend. Marshall was always laid back. He was always the quiet, reserved one. You know what? He was good as he could be, do anything for you. He loved sports. And he coached the baseball teams down at Burkham Field. And the kids nowadays that I see that was on his team said they said they were just heartbroken, when he passed. Said he was just like some of them who didn't never know their fathers, and some of them whose father didn't have any interaction with him. Marshall, they said, was just like their father. He was more like a father to all of them, And a couple of them said, if it wasn't for him, that they wouldn't have turned out like they did. Because he said they'd have probably got out there and got with the wrong crowd and all that. But he kept them, he said he kept them with their feet on the ground. Said they go down there, and not only did he coach them, he'd also talk to him to him like a father, you know. And two of them said he was just like their daddy, you know. And everybody just loved Marshall because Marshall was just that easygoing. He was just as good to people as he was. And me and him used to hang together all the time because we went to all the sports and stuff. So, and then of course, when Mama and Daddy got a divorce, they were 10 and 12, and they were old enough to choose which parent they wanted to live with. Well, they didn't want to choose either parent. So since I was 21 and grown, they told the judge, well, my sister lives with us, and said, and she take care of us with my daddy anyway. So they chose me as their guardian. And they grew up, and I became their guardian, and I helped Marshall and Virginia arrange when they got married, and I helped Malcolm and Phyllis arrange when they got married, you know, and whatnot. Now Malcolm, now he was something. Now he was good, and he was nice, you know what I mean? He would be good to you and all that, and he had a sense of humor and all that. But he was the type that he was the worldly one. He loved after he got old enough and was teenager in high school and on till he got grown and married, he loved the women. And he always had a lot of women friends, you know. And of course he had male friends too, but he was always the lover boy, you know. And so
Yeah.
he
That's
was
a good deal.
he went in, but see, he got mad at me, and he gonna hurt me. And he was the kind was strong-headed. Say, I'm gonna do this whether I have to sneak and do it or not. You know what I mean? And then after I would be trying to control, not really control him, but just keep him in check, try to keep him out of trouble, he'd get upset with me, which didn't bother me none. I still did what I had to do. But, so it got when World War II came along, he decided, after he got in high school, and we had World War II and it was over and whatnot, then of course you know they have these places where you can join service, you know. And he always thought that he would love to be in the Navy. So he got mad at me. So he goes down and sign up for the Navy. And when the man called me to come in to talk to him, because he was only 17 when he went in, so I would have to sign for him to go in. Well, I told Mom and Daddy. I said, now he's getting strong-headed here, and he getting girl crazy. And you're catching him doing little, just little stuff. Nothing with the police or anything, like that, but he was just getting you know how you get stubborn and bullheaded. I said, hey, I went down and talked to this officer for the Navy. He done signed up for the Navy because he got mad at me. And he said, I'll sign, if I can't live here, I'll sign up for the Navy. I said, oh, really? I said, go ahead, you know. So he did. So I went down, I signed him in. I told mom and daddy, oh yeah, I signed him in. Oh, did you sign? Yes, I did. Because he's getting stubborn, bullheaded, and the older he gets, the less you're going to be able to control him. I said, but that man in that Navy is going to control him, or he's going to stay. They're going to have him locked up there on that boat most of the time until he hear him. I said, but he's not going to be with them like he think he can get away with at home. So he went in the Navy.